us have a look to see what's been going on here. Now, I'm sure most of you have heard news about this. It's kind of been in the news for 2 or 3 days now. This is from a few nights ago when British anti-trans activist whether a British anti-trans activist visa waiver into the country is to be lifted will be decided by the end of the week, Immigration New Zealand says. Kelly J. Keane-Minchon's entry for speaking events in Auckland and Wellington may be in doubt after her rally in Melbourne erupted into clashes between LGBTI activists and some of her supporters, a number of whom are seen throwing Nazi salutes. Immigration General Manager Richard Owen said Keane-Minchon's case was being reviewed as quickly as possible as he expected it to be resolved before the end of the week at the latest. Keane-Minchon, is known as Posie Parker, posted a video on Twitter in response challenging Prime Minister Christopher Hipkins to revoke her visa at his peril. So let's have a look at that conversation. So this is part of her conversation on Twitter, and this is our best mate on the AM show talking to the Prime Minister about that challenge made by Minchon. Let's have a look.
Controversial British activist Posie Parker, that's what she goes by. She's issued a warning to our Prime Minister.
So Chris Hipkins, roll the dice, my friend.
What?
I don't think you'll dare to keep me from coming into New Zealand. But we'll see. We'll see.
The decision is with Immigration New Zealand. Chris Hipkins is with us now.
Tell you what, we've got more. We want to give Chippy the chance to respond, but I would just go, all right, you're gone. It's like you want to, because if they don't, she'll go, yeah, see, they were too scared to ban me. And if you do, she'll be able to play the victim card. But I'm like, whatever, even for that's enough. You're out of here. But we'll just see what Chippy had to say about it.
Prime Minister, good morning. Do you have any update on this situation?
It's a matter for the officials. It's not something that I'm going to intervene in or get involved with. Ultimately, whether someone meets the good character test or not to enter New Zealand isn't something that I would get involved in.
Yeah. Do you think she's threatening to sue politicians like yourself, media, for calling her anti-trans? I mean, have you actually, in all of the comments you've made about her, can you give me an example of one thing she has said that you're not happy with?
Stupid question, because Chippy just said this has nothing to do with me, and now he's going, well, what has she said to make? He's asking what has she said to keep her out, and Chippy's already going, look, this is not my decision. But anyway.
As I indicated very clearly yesterday, it's not something I've spent a huge amount of time on, and I don't intend to. I believe in free speech. People are entitled to express their views. People are entitled to condemn other people whose views they disagree with. No one's entitled to incite people to do, to violence and to things such as that. I'd encourage everyone, when they're exercising their right to free speech, to do that responsibly. That's part of living in a community, but we have rules that protect free speech for a reason.
Totally. It's interesting because your response to this is different to that of your predecessor.
Ooh,
who
I thought they were connected at the hip in the same person.
You're saying, actually, so long as you're not inciting violence against a particular group of people, then you should be able to go and say what you like.
That's not necessarily what I said. I said that people should exercise their right to free speech responsibly. I don't think people should deliberately go out as to offend other people or to attack them or to ridicule them or to persecute them. I don't think that that's what responsible human beings should do to other people. That's not very nice. But in terms of what the law says, there's a clear line in the law around what you can't do, and I respect the line that I respect that line.
Okay.
So there you go. That was a response from that. I thought it might be interesting to actually have a look as well as to when she was in Melbourne, what happened at the protest there, so people have a very clear understanding as to what's going on, and then we might have a look at the 3 News report from tonight. So this is the Melbourne protest, ABC News Australia reporting on what happened over there.
This is British activist Kelly J. Keane-Minchon. She's been appearing at anti-transgender rights rallies across Australia. She says she is calling for women's rights, but those who oppose her coming here say her message is one of hate, and her next stop is Hobart.
The hurt that this is causing the trans and gender diverse community in Tasmania is undescribable. The slurs that we're hearing from the speaker and from her supporters are abhorrent.
A group of neo-Nazis joined the Melbourne rally, performing the Nazi salute and sparking violent clashes.
Tasmania is a bit different to Victoria, and I don't expect to have that kind of thing occurring. We've certainly got security in place. We've talked to the police, we've talked to the parliamentary security people.
They're fake feminists who are playing footsies with Nazis, and they should be condemned.
Saturday's events have ignited calls for the Hobart rally to be cancelled. That decision rests with the Speaker and the Upper House President. They've given the green light for it to go ahead, but say it must be respectful.
There you go. So there's your first point, Chewy. Maybe I'll throw up. So this is, people know who watch this for me, right? And stay with me, baby birds. I'm not gonna, don't cut out on the end of one sentence and think that's the finish of this conversation. But you all know that watch this regularly. When I talk about speech, I always err on the side of more speech rather than less, right? I've said very clearly I don't think that there is such a thing as kind of absolutism when it comes to free speech. I mean, we could use examples of, threatening to kill the Prime Minister or shouting fire in a theatre. But if there's an opportunity to either err between less speech or more speech, I typically err towards more speech. So this is one of the reasons I sent out this text or tweet in the weekend. And this is a journey for me as well. We're going to get there. So this is a tweet I put out in the general. It says, unless there is a direct call to action, I don't in general hold people accountable for what their supporters say or do. What is important to ask is, what messages must you be sending if these are the sort of people you're attracting? In other words, we've got examples of every political figure from Bernie Sanders to, Donald Trump to, I guess, Posie Parker, having their supporters do horrific things. There was a situation where Bernie Sanders supporter shot up and killed some people and then claimed to be a supporter of Bernie and doing it in his name. So it's very difficult for me to hold the person accountable for the actions of their supporters unless it's a direct call. However, it's not difficult to go, if these are the people who are hearing your message and getting something from it, what does that say about your message? So, Chewy, jump in, sir.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying there, but I mean, it all falls apart when you're the person at the rally with the microphone that has the chance to turn to the Nazis that are on your side, very clearly on your side, and saying, you guys are some of the most detestable human beings to ever walk the earth.
Agreed.
Fuck off. We do not need you. And it is at your first instance, if you have the opportunity to do that and you don't, that is the message that you're sending, that you are happy to have them at your back.
Yeah, it comes back to that thing we've talked about several times. And look, I don't know if I agree necessarily with this statement, but this statement that gets said a lot, that if there's a Nazi sitting at the dinner table and there's 11 other people sitting there as well who don't get up and leave, then there's 12 people sitting at 12 Nazis sitting at the dinner table. Yep. So therefore,
I mean, this is a major major Australasian city.
Yep. With
a group that felt so confident, so comfortable that they could march and do the Nazi salute in front of everyone, and the police would have their back.
Yeah, well, I don't think that's necessarily true, because if you notice, they all had their faces covered. So when you say so comfortable to go and do it, most of them were unidentifiable and standing behind police lines. That doesn't sound that comfortable to me. That sounds
that's
like
just their uniform, though, more than anything. I've been following that particular group for a little while, but
okay.
But yeah, I mean, that kind of comes to a point. I had a conversation with a workmate of mine around this, right? And because I follow these groups and these arguments for so much, it's very easy to just kind of skip the lesson, and just go, yeah, but they're Nazis. That's all the conversation we need to see. Nazis bad. Let's get rid of the Nazis. We all had an agreement in 1940 that the Nazis were bad, and that's it. We don't need to relitigate. We don't need to hear what new ideas they've come up with. They're fuckwits. Let's get rid of them. They should never, ever be allowed to do this ever again. It's not a debate about free speech. We've already done that. Nazis bad. But yeah, when you are someone that goes, hey, look, you can defeat these ideas in the marketplace of ideas. and erring to the side of, more speech is good speech. I agree with that too, because you've got to sit there and go, well, if the boot was on the other foot, what if it was my views that were being suppressed?
Yeah.
But I think when it comes to these particular views, when it is literally debating a group's right to exist, that's not, I prefer Marmite over Vegemite, is it?
Yeah. No, you're 100% right, and this is why this has been a bit of a journey for me, because the conversation as well. Caitlin, check your Twitter. Caitlin, check your Twitter messages. And this has been a bit of a journey for me, because my question is always, and it's not because I'm litigious or I'm trying to look for defense, it's because I'm precise. And exactly what you're saying, if I'm on the other side of a conversation, I want to know my protections there. What does it mean to incite? That's a big part of it for me. What does it mean to incite? I mean, this is going on with the Donald Trump stuff at the moment. Him saying we're going to fight like hell or whatever is. Was that enough for him to incite what happened in the Capitol building? What does that actually mean? And one of the reasons that I'm now kind of coming across and coming around, kind of coming to a conclusion is something that you sent out. But before we do that as well, I kind of want to put this thing out there, and this is just a pondering. And okay, fair enough, Caitlin. Thank you. I won't say what we did. Anyway, we are. I'm wondering about the oxygen that this is given as well, and I do wonder this, and I'm not suggesting that people should shut up and not pay any attention, right? I'm not saying that. I'm not suggesting that people shouldn't protest, but I do know as well that one of the reasons that got good coverage and made good news coverage was the rally and the counter protest. And I wonder if there's any place, and I guess I'm thinking about like an advisory role right now, and someone going, right, let's blue sky think, people, what's the best outcome for us here? And if it got no oxygen at all, because there was like no counter protest, would that be a better outcome for the cause, or giving the rally a whole bunch of attention and giving it headlines all around the world? Is that a better cause because it's standing up to the bully? I don't know the answer to that, but it's something that if I was in a planning meeting for the counter protest, I'd be like, just imagine if no one turned up and there was just a bunch of sad ass white middle-aged people going, yeah, and they were like, oh, and the media only got one thing to show. It's just I'm thinking out loud and wondering if that is ever a conversation that's had.
That literally happened in Christchurch the other week. It made me laugh. There was a pro-Russian rally, that a lot of the counterspin media were talking about it, that sort of thing. One dude turned up on the Bridge of Remembrance. Right. Hilarious when it happens. Look, it's something that has been a discussion for as long as I've been looking at these groups. Is it better to actively combat them? Is it better to ignore them as the sad bunch of losers that they are? And I don't think there's a real answer. Nicola Willis said today that she believed that sunlight was the best disinfectant. I would tweak that a little bit. You shine a light on something ugly so you can smash it. I think, and this will be the only time that I ever say these words. I think Hitler said it best. And I've got this in a different window so I can read it. Hitler confessed in retrospect the only thing that would have broken our movement if the adversary had understood its principle and from the first day had smashed with the most extreme brutality the nucleus of our new movement. Goebbels said if the enemy had known how weak we were at that stage, they probably would have reduced us to jelly. It would have crushed in blood the very beginning of our work. So, yeah. I mean, I think when it comes to something that is literally a neo-Nazi group, they do not have speech with any relevance, not even a shred of goodness, because they might try and hide that. They try to hide behind the concept of free speech, because that's the only platform that they have any standing. They can't debate on the relevance of their argument. It is irrelevant.
Yeah.
But they find a common ally in the anti-trans movement.
Yeah.
They find an ally that is looking for backup.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah,
ties
it's
into
that
a lot of their things of traditional gender roles, of traditional society. You know, it's a button issue for so many people. But
it's
yeah, it
that
is a classic, like, are we the baddies? Yes.
it's
Yes, you are the baddies.
the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Mm.
And that's always, if you're ever doing that, then that's an ugly situation to be in, whether it's a protest or whether it's a war type situation. I also wonder, I'd like to play the clip from TV3 News tonight because it kind of expands out on it a little bit. But one of the things they think about, so this is the counter, I can't say that now, can I? The contrarian point to what I was just saying as well, the question I was asking, because the reason that Kellyanne will be turned away is if the rallies pose a threat of disorder. So in other words, saying that giving them no oxygen, that's basically what I'm saying, giving them no oxygen. Remember, we've talked before about the Virgin Mary episode of South Park. And because the Catholic Church put up such a stink about it, it got a 10-fold increase of viewership that week. So if you give it no oxygen and no one knows about it, is that a better outcome? The flip side to that, and I think it talks about it in this story from News Hub, is that the reason she'll get turned away is because of concerns around safety to do with the actual event. So therefore, okay, caveat, this is not my advice, but if the counter protesters make sure that the people know it's going to be unsafe because of their protest, that could be a reason to get turned away. So how does that kind of marry into this conversation as well? Because if you have a look at the story, we have a look at the story now. And again, this is not a criticism, they're just observations. At one point, one of the counter protesters does kind of get up on stage and try and rip something out of someone's hand and trying to scream into the mic, and that creates a kerfuffle. Now that kerfuffle, that physical altercation, was caused by the counter protester getting on stage. So that's one of the reasons of the physical conflict. How does that work out? You know, like sort of saying there is going to be physical conflict, so she better not come, or not being there at all and giving them no oxygen, or something in between. I'm just kind of thinking what would be best. When I talk a lot to my, I don't want to say to my kids, it's patronizing, but to people, to marketers, I'm going like, what outcome do you want from this? Like, what outcome, if you could wave your magic wand and go, what outcome do you want from this? What would that be? Okay, let's start with that. How do we get there? What is the outcome that people want from this woman turning up to make the, what would be the outcome for the protest? Is it just that they want a presence felt? Is it that they want to support the trans community? Is it that they want to shout her down? Like, what's the outcome? Okay, if it's that you want to support the trans community, then you can do anything for that. I don't know if you remember, Chewy, when the Destiny Church people turned up here to Dunedin to protest in the Octagon, the counter community were on the other side of the Octagon having a concert, all looking at the stage. That was it. There was no, they didn't even acknowledge them. They had a concert, they had a musical concert, and they just had a big dance party, and they were dancing to like Tub Thumping by Chumbawamba and that kind of stuff. And it was brilliant. It was a brilliant response.
And so, I think that is the current plan for the counter protests. Certainly when it came to Hobart, the counter protesters there came with so much noise making equipment, bullhorns, speakers, the whole thing. You could not hear what she was saying.
So if that's so that's the target, to drown her out. So then how do you do that? That doesn't require any sort of physical interaction at all. That requires bullhorns, PA systems, noisemakers, and probably getting close and making noise. That's what that requires. So you could actually do that with no physical interaction at all. Now, I'm not saying that people shouldn't. You make your own judgment call on that. But if that's the outcome, then that can be addressed many, many ways. That means what that is people that she's coming, she's speaking, but she's being drowned out. Okay, so how do we do that? Like, let's now start again and go, how do we then get that outcome that we want? And that's how you do it, in my opinion. I mean, I'm not going to be there, but if it was in Dunedin, I'd probably be there, but it's not in Dunedin, so I'm not going to be there. But you know, how do you actually get that outcome then? That's where I'd be starting the planning.
The other part of that argument of like, do you just ignore it, or do you do a counter protest?
Yep.
And I think you mentioned this very briefly just before, is like part of it is showing up for the communities that are being targeted by these groups. You have to show solidarity, and I'm all about solidarity. I'm also all about being very loud in public. So that's great for me as well. But yeah, these groups, like the trans community in New Zealand, my God, the mental fortitude that you have to put up with this conversation, this constant grinding conversation of, do these people deserve to exist? Do we care about the suicide rate, the rate of poor mental health and all of that sort of thing? They get reduced to very brief talking points, or the worst case scenarios. Should they even be allowed in these spaces? I think this is something that people need to show up and just go, yes, we will fight for you.
It's really. I'm really interested in the outcome. So I'm picturing, could you imagine if this was happening? I'm just going to pick Dunedin because I know the areas. Could you imagine if this was happening in the Octagon in Dunedin and there was 1,000 people there turning up to Kelly and protest, but then down at the Oval there was 10,000 people having a party, like at the other end of town. Pick a side. Yeah, at the other end of town, you're ratioing them in real time in real life. What would be more impacting? Because you're showing your support. You're like, come to our party at the Oval. Come to our party if you're in Auckland at the Auckland Domain, whatever it is. Let's have a big party. Everyone turn up there and let's ratio these fuckers and show them where the power actually lies, with the 10,000 people at this event versus the 500 sad asses at your one.
Yeah, I would definitely have it at the same place, but because there's a reason for that, right?
Yeah.
Even if it is a relatively small group, the people that go to the initial protest, they will feel that they are with their people.
Yeah.
They feel like, I'm part of a movement and nobody is here telling us that we're wrong.
Yeah. All right.
Hey,
let's have a listen.
At the same place, they can do the mental math.
Yeah. Look, I hear you, man. I hear you. And as I said, I'm interested as to how this is going to best work out for the message that you want to get across there. Let's have a listen to this last story before we head off for the night. Here we go.
The anti-trans activist known as Posie Parker has threatened our Prime Minister, telling him to revoke her visa at his peril. Trouble is, it's not his job, it's Immigration New Zealand's.
It's considering turning her away after her rally in Melbourne attracted neo-Nazis, and she wants to hold similar rallies in Auckland and Wellington this weekend. Here's Yannicka Terrell.
This is why Posie Parker, real name Kelly J. Keane, could be turned away at our border. Not because of her views.
There is no such thing as non-binary!
Or her suggestion that armed men should
It's such a stupid thing to say. There is no such thing as non-binary. I mean, you could argue, I don't agree or I don't believe, but if it's in popular culture and it's in dictionary definitions and it's in verbiage and it's being used by society, then there is, so it's just such a dumbed down, stupid perspective to say the water is not wet. It is not wet water. The sky is not blue. It's just, it's infantile. It's ridiculous.
Protect women in bathrooms from trans people.
I'm talking about you dads who maybe carry. I think you should start using women's toilets.
But she could be turned
That
away
video's
because
been
her
taken
rally in
down.
Melbourne broke out
Yeah.
into scuffles.
That video's been taken down.
Minister for Women in Education!
It
By the
attracted
throat,
skirmishes between her
Jesus.
neo-Nazi supporters performing the Hitler salute and trans rights counter-protesters. But Keane is livid. Immigration New Zealand is now reviewing her right to come here. She's threatening legal action and calling out our Prime Minister.
Tell you what, Chris. Mr. Prime Minister, Chris Hipkins. Let me just tell you this. Revoke my visa at your peril. Roll the dice, my friend. I don't think you'll dare.
How about Christopher Hipkins turning up to the counter protest? How would that look in Wellington? That'd be pretty good.
To keep me from coming into New Zealand. Hi.
Immigration New Zealand can turn someone away if they're considered a risk to security or threat to public order.
There you
Whether
go.
someone
Threat
meets
to
the
public
good
order.
character test or not to enter New Zealand isn't
Threat to
something
public
that I
order.
would
That's
get
what it
involved
is.
in.
But National believes Keane should be let in.
we wouldn't ban her from coming here, because we are also a liberal democracy that believes in free speech.
Police will be at Keen's rallies planned for here at Auckland's Albert Park on Saturday and Wellington Civic Square on Sunday. And Auckland Council says it's received her health and safety plan. The council says we recognise that Aucklanders hold a...
Anyway, we don't support it. We're just doing the thing. Now, Chewy, I said to you this has been a journey for me as well, because the question that I asked at the start was, what is incitement? This is actually from you, yeah? Not from you, but I saw this on your Twitter feed. And it's a thread about incitement and what it means. Okay, so I'm going to go through this. It's from Lila VPG. And it's since Kelly J. Keen, aka Posie is trying to enter Australia. Let's have a look at some of her alleged behaviours outside of transphobia. Alleged, it does say that. In 2019, Kelly was a guest on a certain person's show. He was a white nationalist who was called for white ethno-states, made videos with Richard Spencer Mark. I don't know who these people are. I know who David Duke is. And well as court documents showing she was accused of SAing a disabled teen. In a now deleted YouTube video, this is what you saw when you said what? Kelly said armed men should enter women's bathrooms to protect them against trans people, and suggested trans men should be sterilized in a tweet. This is an incitement of violence. She has partnered with the Heritage Foundation on multiple occasions, including in 2019 and 2020, who are anti-abortion and anti-LGBT+. Blah. In 2019, Kelly traveled to Norway to speak at a conference alongside Hans, I can't say that name, a Holocaust denial, whom she took a selfie with afterwards. Proud Boys, who are at the January 6th Capitol Rioters, have been spoken at her events and had selfies with her. Just not to defend her, the selfies with a personality is not something that you get necessarily hold to, because they probably have hundreds of people coming up to the selfies. That doesn't necessarily mean, but a lot of these other things do. So there are layers of things that I think you can hold accountable as well, like guns in restrooms. That's a pretty big one if you want to call to violence, incitement to violence. At one of Kelly's recent events, one of the speakers directly quoted Hitler. It's obvious that a lie that trans women are women. If you want proof, I'd like to refer you to the writings of a certain Adolf Hitler in his seminal work Mein Kampf. Shall we listen? Shall we see that's what she says?
Small ways lie. Do you know the big lie? The big lie was first described by Adolf Hitler in Mein Kampf. The big lie is such a big lie that ordinary people like us think, well, that can't be a lie, because I'd never tell any as big a lie as that.
What the
We
fuck?
only lie in small ways. The big lie, well, there is one big lie going on, and it was begun by men in the early part of the 20th century. It was began when they had an erotic fantasy, and they decided...
Enough. Quoting Adolf Hitler, she praised Tommy Robinson. She had been invited by other co-founders of Hearts of Oak, Carl Benjamin, who is described by anti-feminists and anti-Islamic. He's reportedly said Jewish people, unfortunately for them, have got to drop the identity politics. There are only a few examples, just a coincidence, keeps happening and goes on. So once I read that tweet, and look, they do say allegedly for a lot of that, but I mean, I'm going to do some more research. I think there's some stuff in there that are pretty clearly incitements to violence. I think that's questions now been answered. So I don't have a problem with the concept of her being associated with that based on those readings, which I am, so everyone knows, going to fact check, right? But based on tonight and based on the allegation, that if it is as it pans out, then I don't have a problem with that.
You can just judge her by the things that she said and the company that she keeps. Is enough for me. I think the Minister of Immigration will just cancel her visa. I've had a lot of people seen a lot of comments about how does that work? The UK is a visa waiver country. That means you don't need a visa before you come here. Basically, coming into New Zealand, you get a stamp on your thing. You can stay for 3 months. That doesn't mean that she won't get bounced at the border.
Yeah, well, that's basically what happens. I mean, that's like RV. What's his name? He came over from Australia. The guy who has been convicted of abusing his wife, or whatever.
Who also had a big conversation with her, which I love, because he's a Nazi apologist as well. And if we're talking about this woman being a feminist, you know, a women's rights person. Why is she having an interview with a convicted domestic violence guy?